So Ronald Perlman is a pretty brilliant finance guy, but unfortunately for him, he stayed too leveraged, owned too much debt, bought too much stuff, um, and managed to bankrupt himself almost. And we'll see how that goes. But I feel bad for the guy. He was a great financial innovator in the 1980s. He did the first big aggressive leveraged buyout with Revlon. And that was good for a lot of reasons, but he also ruined Marvel Comics. So lost a little bit of respect from him with him ruining Marvel Comics, raising prices unnecessarily, relaunching titles just to get new #1 sales of classic heroes, allowing editorial to just completely dissipate into publish whatever you can at any price with whatever variant covers you could do. This is really what destroyed the integrity of Marvel Comics, was his ownership in the early 1990s by the time he was doing it. And what was worse was he used Marvel's popularity and its stock to eventually acquire other companies for stock and then do crazy loans and things like that against the stock. He bankrupted Marvel Comics. And thankfully, Avi Arad and his partner wound up buying Marvel Comics and saving it. So there was something left, but it was forever broken, having strong editorial people in charge of Marvel Comics and keeping it as an ongoing series and an ongoing quality, well-told, special thing. This is where Marvel Comics became ruined, was when this guy bought it and didn't understand it and strip-mined. But right now, he's got his own problems. This is coming from Zero Hedge. He needs cash. Ron Perlman's leveraged empire collapses in a deluge of fire sales. He's lost a lot of money. Now, when people are billionaires, they're not usually just sitting on billions and billions and billions of cash. A lot of times it's in stock, in property, other investments, and things like that. But some billionaires do hold a bunch of cash because they're like, hey, you never know when things could go wrong. Well, not Ron Perlman. So let's go on with the story. Before we do, to support my work, definitely subscribe to the channel. That's numero uno for me. Subscribe to the channel, click the bell for notifications, and share the video with other people that would like to know about Ron Perlman. So back to the article. For billionaire Ronald O. Perlman, the time to cash in his chips is now. And of course, by cash in his chips, we mean liquidate everything in a panic after the huge health event sends your highly leveraged empire into ruins. He has lost a lot of money just in the last 2 years. He's gone down from a net worth of $19 billion to $4.2 billion. Now, I'd still like to have $4.2 billion, but $4.2 billion, even at that rate, is speculative. So to lose that much money in that amount of time, it's pretty hectic. He's got a lot of friends. He's got a lot of connections, especially with Citibank, Citicorp. So they're helping him. But, at 77, you'd think you'd be chilling out, not trying to hustle and save what's left of your money and stay out of trouble. We'll see. In what will likely wind up as a microcosm of the United States economy as a whole, we hope that doesn't happen, Perlman is currently in the process of selling his Gulfstream 650 and his 257-foot yacht and crates of his artwork. Gulfstream is a private jet, according to Bloomberg. According to the report, he's already sold his stake in AM General, sold a flavorings company he had owned for decades. He built his fortune on this flavorings company. It's like a licorice company. And has hired banks to sell stock he owns in other companies. Among the art he's selling is Jasper John's 0 through 9, worth about $70 million. That's a fancy piece of art. Gerhard Richter's Zwei Kerzen, also known as Two Candles, worth about $50 million. And Cy Twombly's Leaving Paphos Ringed with Waves, which is worth about $20 million. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't hold that either. I'd sell it. Why not? Art advisor Wendy Goldsmith said, what he's selling is as blue chip as it gets. Perlman, under pressure due to his crashing stake in Revlon, has seen his fortune drop from $19 billion. He used to make $1 billion a year back in the early 90s. Not anymore. to just $4.2 billion over the last 2 years, according to the Bloomberg Billionaire Index. His investment company, McAndrews and Forbes, is said it needed to rework its holdings back in July due to the huge health event. That reworking looks more like a fire sale of everything. Perlman said publicly, "We quickly took significant steps to react to the unprecedented economic fallout from what we were facing. I've been very public about my intention to reduce leverage, streamline operations, and sell some assets and convert those assets to cash in order to seek new investment opportunities, and that is exactly what we're doing." He has been a very impressive financier. When he bought Revlon, he sold a couple of divisions that had nothing to do with makeup, health laboratories, and things like that, pharmaceutical companies that they owned, that they diversified into. He made some very, very smart financial moves, and that's where he wound up making all this money. But he's got too much. He always loved to do crazy stuff with debt. Like he had stock in Marvel Comics, and he would drive up the stock of Marvel Comics through a variety of ways without getting into it in too much detail. He would then use his ownership of the stock of Marvel Comics to get borrowings off of that. So he would put it up as like collateral for a mortgage, and because of his great relationships with banks, they were always happy to lend him lots of money. And for the most part, it worked out, and he paid. But in some cases, starting with Marvel, he did not pay. He continued, "I realized that for far too long, I've been holding on to too many things that I don't use or even want. I concluded that it's time for me to clean house, simplify, and give others a chance to enjoy some of the beautiful things I've acquired, just as I have for decades." Okay, why not? A friend of Perlman's, Grayton Carter, told Bloomberg, "Often people say this sort of thing, it's masking something else. In Ronald's case, it's true. He's learned to love and appreciate the bourgeois comforts of family and home." He described Perlman as crazy about spending time at home. Perlman is he is a very passionate guy. He's also a religious guy, but clearly he's got issues with these businesses. Some of his sales will go to pay down loans from Citigroup, though Perlman's spokesman said they're not forced sales. Forced sales would mean if they were pledged as collateral, so that when he borrowed money, he was like, "Okay, this is my collateral." And the bank was like, "Listen, you need to now sell this because we want our damn money back." They're claiming it's not at that stage just yet, so good for him. He's a little bit ahead of the game. She also denied Perlman is selling his 57-acre estate in the Hamptons. He has this amazing 57-acre estate in the Hamptons on Long Island. Supposedly, it's worth about $180 million. It's not being actively, it's not like, quote, on the market officially, but according to this article in New York Post, they are taking offers if people are interested and they want to throw him $200 million. He ain't going to say no. Perlman is best known as being a fearless financial engineer from the 1980s and 1990s. Ken Mollus said of Perlman's track record, he was imaginative, aggressive, and in innovative ways that changed the financial landscape. It's true. He was incredibly aggressive. He came up with a lot of great ideas. He worked with Michael Milken. Michael Milken got in trouble. Rudy Giuliani got him thrown in jail, Michael Milken. And Trump recently, I think it was in the last year, gave a full pardon to Michael Milken, who was known as the junk bond king. But the $1.74 billion valuation Revlon had back in the 1980s when he purchased it has now fallen to just $365 million. Revlon is now, he took it as a privately owned company. He was a public company. He bought it, and then he sold, anyway, he took it private. He had pre-sold a bunch of debt, and then used that to acquire Revlon, and then brought it back as a public company eventually. But they've been struggling with Revlon ever since he decided to keep it and didn't sell it when he had the opportunity to sell it. Perlman loved the business and said it defined him. He'd offered it several loans and has catalyzed several executive changes to try and keep the business afloat. Revlon is now losing to smaller cosmetic companies that advertise through social media while dealing with the efforts and the effects of the health event on mass retail, which is, it's really, really damaged retail sales. So Revlon has got very little revenue coming in. Some Revlon bonds are trading at 14 cents on the dollar, and the company has $3 billion in debt. 14 cents on the dollar means that people do not expect those bonds to be repaid, and they probably shouldn't, because they're probably not going to be. He used some of his massive stake in Revlon as collateral for debt in McAndrews and Forbes. That's his main parent company for wheeling and dealing. Revlon shares are down 68% this year, likely triggering the deluge of selling Perlman is doing. Yeah, because he's got to cover some debts. And when the stock is doing terrible, all he can do is sell other assets or borrow other money against those assets. But it doesn't seem like he's in a great position to be borrowing billions of dollars right now. All told, at least 9 banks have claims on his assets. Including Art Collection, House in the Hamptons, and various aircraft. There's $267 million in mortgages linked to his Upper East Side headquarters of McAndrews and Forbes. So in New York City, he owns a couple of buildings that he uses as a business headquarters. Currently, Perlman's Art Collection makes him about a third of his fortune, and that can be tricky for assets that have in a liquid market. Yeah, when you buy expensive art for $70 million, you buy it as a long-term investment. You don't expect to have to sell it immediately. And it seems like he kind of has to. Recently, one painting he tried to sell was pulled from auction at the last minute due to lack of interest. McAndrews and Forbes saw its general counsel, spokesman, head of capital markets, and CFO all depart over the last few months. That isn't a good sign. That is not a good sign. So when executives leave a company, when the company's having trouble, it's bad. And despite the spin on Perlman's fire sales as being a way to spend more time with family, Perlman has his skeptics, including Richard Hack, who wrote a book about him in 1996. I read that book. It's a pretty good book. Hack concluded, if you want to live a simpler life, you go buy a farm in Oklahoma, not sell a painting out of your townhouse in Manhattan. He's right about that. If he's selling his art, it's because he needs cash. Yeah, that's true. And look, it happens. And when you're in business, you can run into a crunch and need cash. That's just part of being in business. Being in business is not having a job. It's totally different. You got to make it happen every single day, and you never know what's going to happen. And for the most part, it's a great thing. But at times like what he's going through, it ain't so fantastic. It would have been good, and I'm sure he's thinking of this now, if he would have turned some of that $19 billion in net worth to like maybe a third of it into $6 or $7 billion in cash, and then he would have been in a much better position. But it's always timing in business. It's always timing. If you want to check out the story of how Marvel had to fight for survival thanks to Ronald Perlman's crazy overextension of Marvel, this book, Comic Wars, is great by Dan Raviv. It gives you a lot of background, and it's very educational. It's pretty damn interesting. Also, you can support my work at collegeofthedead.com. Pick up a copy of College of the Dead Graduation Day, where college costs you an arm and a leg. It's an ongoing zombie apocalypse series. We're working on College of the Dead Spring Break right now. Also, you can sign up at epicmermaids.com and make sure that you are notified by me when you get with a free email that tells you, hey, the book is now launching. That will be coming out soon, so sign up at epicmermaids.com. It's kind of like Game of Thrones with mermaids. I'm sure you're going to love it. And I will see you again soon with another video, and if I don't see you, I will miss you.